Okay, friends, I am really excited this morning to have my dear friend Sridhar Solur, who is who I call the oracle of technology, product, and anytime I have a question on the future of technology and innovation, he is the go-to man. So Sridhar, such a pleasure to have you this morning.
Poonacha, thank you. Very kind words. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, man.
Awesome. So let's kind of, before I, get into the details, and he has a lot of information to unpack this morning, I want to do a brief intro of Sridhar and why I believe you're going to hear this here first, that what he is going to say over the next 30 to 45 minutes, no pressure, Sridhar, is going to determine the future of technology, products and services, industries, and how institutions will adapt and thrive post the pandemic. And he has beautifully mapped over the last 5 milestones or eclipses which have happened in human civilization, how we have come out stronger as a species and hopefully continue to do so. So I'm really excited because this is a perfect conversation where technology, well-being, and communities come together for greater good. And that's really the reason I wanted to have Sridhar today. Let me do a quick background on Sridhar. This could take for a long time, but I want to do a the Reader's Digest version of Sridhar here. Sridhar Solur is a product builder and entrepreneur focused on robotics, IoT, and all AI-based products. He founded HP's Cloud Mobile, and I remember those early days when he was talking about cloud print and how he took it from just a napkin drawing all the way into a thriving business. And today we take cloud printing for granted. A mobile and wearable business building products for lifestyle brands like Hugo Boss, Coach, Titan, Ferrari, and Movado. So he actually made quantified self or wearables cool, right? Most wearables were not wearable. And I remember him working with Titan and all the companies and really making the so-called Fitbits of the world and the watches really look cool and sexy. And that's really what Sridhar has done. He was also the head of products and engineering of Digital Home at Comcast, building products like Xfinity Home and X5. Recently, he was the Chief Product Officer, EVP and GM at Shark Ninja, working on appliances on food tech and robotics. He was in the top 20 IoT influencers by Inc. magazine, a board member and advisor of IoTC, mentor to 500 startups, Alchemist Enterprise Accelerator. While he is not working, he is an addict when it comes to running, climbing trails. He has 3 dogs, loves his family, he's an amazing father. And above all, we also share love for our favorite home city, Bengaluru. And any given point of time when we can have a nice masala dosa, which is a South Indian crepe, and some good Mysore filter coffee, it is, I would say, a delight. So even though we can't have it today, I think virtually we're going to connect. And I think 2 Bangalore boys really having a conversation on the future of technology, industry, products, and institutions. So Sridhar, with that, take it away, my friend.
Poonacha, that's quite the intro. Thank you. No one has used the word Sridhar and sexy in one sentence before. And what I'm really happy is, as you said, 2 Bangalore boys, sitting in the US and, and talking tech. Okay. And, this is going to be a fun session. Again, before I jump into the session and share my thoughts and presentation, I have to tell you, no one, can be clairvoyant. Of course, there are lots of assumptions, hypotheses, and, some of these hypotheses are yet to be validated because we are talking about a post-pandemic world and we don't know. So take things that I say about post-pandemic world with a, pinch of salt and add to this conversation, post questions, add to this conversation so that we can enrich each other's lives. Right. So with that said.
And I'm going to share, I think, your Twitter handle at Sridhar Solur and obviously on the show notes. And let's kind of keep this dialogue and conversation. Absolutely right. But I can tell you, friends, he's going to be bang on.
No all pressure. Right. Oh my God, that's a lot of pressure. Without further ado, I'll jump into my presentation. And Poonacha, stop me, and as I'm going through the deck, if you have any questions, you could get that clarified.
Absolutely.
All right.
Trust me, I'm going to have a lot of conversation with you.
All right.
I'm going to learn in the
Massive.
process.
Great. Can you see my screen well?
Yep, perfect.
All
I
right.
can see it.
So post any questions, either directly to Poonacha or to
on
me
the Facebook. Yep.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, and then we'll take it from there, guys. So with that said, as Poonacha said, who I am as a person, I just want to tell you some of the products that I've built, right? So cloud print, your ability to print from mobile was an era between 2007 to 2011. The gorgeous watch that you see there was one of the earlier Movado connected watches. We knew that Apple was going to come up with a watch. We knew there was going to be a disruption, and we went to the watch companies and said, look, we'll help you create a gorgeous connected watch, so that what you wear is fashion, what you carry is technology, so you can have the best of both worlds. So went and built, fashion tech products for brands like Hugo Boss, Juicy Couture, Ferrari, Titan, the Bangalore company, Poonacha.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so happy that, we were able to give back to the country where we were born. And then worked with Comcast to work on connected home, focusing on home security, home automation. And what's really fun there is, we saw digital and physical coming together. We were talking about physical security, right? Home security, just like ADT, just like SimpliSafe and all the well-known brands to give you peace of mind. But then the biggest question that came in there, Poonacha, is when your kids come to you and say, Dad, I want to go out and play, you have two questions. Where are you going to go? And with whom are you playing? That's in the physical world. Don't you want to know what your kids are doing in the digital world? And we thought we could bring in peace of mind with both physical and digital coming together. And that's the product that we created in Comcast, Xfinity Home and X5. And recently, from IoT, we thought we'll put IoT on wheels and build the robots, the Shark IQ robot, which is now shipping in the marketplace. I can easily say is my baby. It maps your home, it understands the idiosyncrasies of the light conditions and knows navigate back to the dock, and it empties itself into a trash can. So long story short, from SaaS products on one side, all the way up to robots. And before that, I used to work on products, if the name Alta Vista rings a bell, I can tell you, that's a product that I worked on a long time ago. So
this is the question I want to ask you, Sridhar, while I look at it. This is an important thing because as designers, as technologists, as you look into the future, it's about why do we do what we do, right? As a technologist, how can you design for greater good? It's not about coming up with the next version of Angry Birds or the next thing, but what can we do? So I want to ask you a question. Yeah? When you look at designing, and every time you look at designing a product or a service, I love the fact you said, children have to be safe digitally, or I want to improve convenience so people can be more creative at home and doing other things. How do you go through the process of coming up with that clarity? Do you have a process, or what is that? How do you kind of go through that process of why do you do what you do?
It's very simple. You need to understand the mission behind the product. It's not just to create, economic value. Right. You need to understand the mission. So let's go to the three products that are in here and then look at the mission. Right. If you wear something that is gorgeous, the mission is you feel good, you feel beautiful, you feel happy. You wear what you wear because nobody wears a watch. Let's take an expensive mechanical watch. Timekeeping is such a ruse. It's not to find out what the time is. It tells you something about yourself. You want to project your persona, and that gives you a level of satisfaction for some people. So what you wear is fashion. So I keep saying this again and again. It's like if everything was very functional, we wouldn't have so many brands, right? We would just be covering ourselves like space age clothes. All of us would wear the same kind of clothing all the time. So the goal here was to fulfill and make people feel good about themselves, right? So the fashion tech piece was, okay, there is a quantified self, so that you can make yourself better. And, the only race you have is with yourself. And so every morning you could feel better, both the way you look and the way you feel. So that was the goal in bringing, some of these fashion tech watches. We spoke about, so the first thing is having mission.
Right.
The second thing is you need to be able to solve problems. Like, for example, in our robot, we created an auto empty dock. The reason was very simple. All these robotic vacuum cleaners have a small dust cup. Every time it goes and cleans, you have to take this like little small dust cup and go and empty it. It just doesn't make sense because you're moving from a world where things are being done by you to a world where things are being done for you, so that you can you free up your time to do something bigger. Right. So long story short is, you absolutely have to completely understand your consumer, understand what they are actually looking for, not what they are asking, but, what they need, and then try and take care of their need. And that's what we are focused on, like, is an insane focus on the consumer and their needs and creating products around them. And if the products that you create are not, 4+ stars, don't even try. You need to create products that are 4+.
And this is an important point, because I think there's a very interesting podcast or Twitter storm by Naval Ravikant. I really urge everybody to listen to him. And one of the things he talks about how AI, people always talk about, oh my technology, AI, are they going to replace humans? What are they going to do? And this conversation to actually unpack some of these things, technology is neutral. AI is neutral. The application of AI and technology can free up humans, right? Today, if I can send a robot in a hazardous environment for a COVID-19 tech, it's amazing what it can do. It can help firefighters, first responders. And that's where technology comes in. If I'm just building technology for the sake of building technology, yes, it's not useful. But I think AI for greater good, I would say humanizing AI, right, is an important thing to think about. Well, we took a look at this whole, and AI is here to stay. Right? It is definitely going to make a difference in humanity. And then Sridhar is going to share his vision. But I think this is a good thing. I would urge people to listen to Naval's conversations, and how when people talk about people, like the printing press came and people thought they were going to lose jobs, but look what happened, right? So anyway, sorry, let's go ahead.
No, great point. Keep that in mind, humanization of AI, and we'll talk about ambient interfaces. We'll talk about sentient. Right. We're going to have some fun there, Poonacha. Right. And of course, along with Naval on one side and Chamath on the other, right. Those are some of the key leaders to follow. And let's jump in. Wow. So what you see here is a framework I've used before, and it's very simple. The focus is the United States for a moment, so bear with me. I don't want to lose you here. We have looked at exponential technologies. And we define exponential as two things. One, the ramp up of adoption of the product or the technology has to be exponential. It should look like an exponential curve. The second is very simple. It should percolate down or penetrate to 60% of the US population. In the last 100 years, we have seen just five, from a technology perspective, wherein the products have had an exponential ramp up and it's reached 60% of the US population. And that happened in the 1920s. It was AM radio. In the 50s, it was television, and the early 2000s, late 90s, was the rise of the internet. And then you have the era of mobile, which is 2007 to 2009. And now we are seeing an exponential ramp up of something else. We'll talk about that. But the framework, Poonacha, is to like look backward. And this framework, this slide actually is not my slide. This was presented initially, by Mary Meeker in 2012. And I thought this was a great framework to use, look backwards into times of economic recession or depression, and look at the technologies that thrived, that's number one, the products it created, which is number two, and three, the institutions that went through a seismic shift or a massive change. Create a framework, extend that framework to the current world, and see what those technologies are, what those potential products are, and potentially the institutions that could go through a massive change.
It's beautiful, because I think this is when it's about looking at the so-called chaos of today and taking a lens looking backwards, and then see what emerged from the chaos, right? So even though today's world is very chaotic, very uncertain, I believe that this too shall pass. And then let us look at what are some of the technologies potentially could emerge, right? And take hope.
Yeah, I mean, hope and faith and progress in humanity. And let's also talk about these eras and see what are the other events, right? Poonacha, when I go into the next slide, since both of us were not born in the first two where the first two technologies took off, so let's just focus on the last three technologies, if that's okay, or last three exponential curves. So there's one thing I want to say before we move into the next slide is all these technologies have had an exponential ramp up in and around times of economic recession or depression, which is like fascinating. This should give us a lot of hope, right, as to where the world is going. So with that said, let me jump into the next slide here. It's an eye chart. Don't try to read it. Let's just follow through. Let's go to the world of Y2K, right? Year 2000 all the way on the left. And we call this the era of internet. And what I'm also going to do, Poonacha, is you will have to tell me if you can see this. I'm going to try and write with my hand.
I can see it. I can see it.
Massive, beautiful touch interface, right? So the thing is, the era of internet, when we went through the economic recession of early 2000, where it was very simple. The technologies that basically achieved critical mass, and the products were associated with e-commerce. Content moved to the web. And of course, there was a percolation of broadband. Do you remember the days, Poonacha, when we had modems?
9600 baud, wow, was that amazing?
Baud was really bad, man. So long story short is the era of internet, enabled a lot of things, like for example, the start of demise of brick and mortar, the rise of Amazon. The thing that you want to remember is every recession is like a portal where some of the previous technologies, they go through an acceleration. It's like a portal where you achieve another escape velocity, and then you go through another one, another escape velocity. Look at where we are today and look at the state of brick and mortar. If you're looking at the stocks, look at Amazon on where it is, right? Through every recession, what has happened is e-commerce has just gone through an acceleration. Look at what happened with the era of internet. We had 300 million devices connected to the internet. And then you moved into, the era of mobile, which is basically the 2007, 2009 kind of era. I say that, because of recession. The thing that you want to see is, basically in the era of internet, there were things that happened at the edge. That means you got broadband at home. A lot of people started getting laptops. The concept of cloud exactly did not exist. You had websites that were created, but they were still in physical data centers and, in big companies' data centers. But when you went to the era of mobile, suddenly there's a power shift that happened to the cloud, where edge and cloud were like equal citizens in the era of internet. In the era of mobile, everything went to the cloud. And then you saw a magnitude increase in the number of devices connected to the internet. Magnitude. You went from 300 million to like 3 billion devices connected to the internet, which is massive. And it was just not, the era of mobile is not just about mobile. It was mobile, social, and cloud. Mm-hmm. And I want to highlight one other thing here. I spoke about acceleration, mm-hmm. When you go through the portal of recession. So you were talking about hope. Mm-hmm. So when you pick the right technologies, the right set of products, you're going to accelerate. You're going to do extremely well, when you go through those portals. Mm-hmm. Similarly, in the era of mobile, I want to highlight one other thing. It's not just mobile. It was mobile, social, and cloud. But it is also a great equalizer. You were talking of hope. Right. Acceleration is hope. It's positive, right? I also call, when you go through a portal like this, it's the era of equalization. I say this because, look, for you to be an entrepreneur in the 2010, 2011, it was fantastic because you could be sitting in a country like India. You could access Amazon Web Services. You didn't need all these servers in your basement to like build a startup. Right. You could use compute instances. You could market via social, right? And look at all the farmers in like Africa and India. They could basically transact, like one among equals with the Western farmers with their mobile phones. Right. So long story short is talking about hope, every recession or every exponential ramp up is associated, it is also an equalizer. It's an accelerator and an equalizer, right? Those are the two things that you want to remember.
And also, I think it gives an opportunity for innovation, breakthrough innovation, right? Because now, like you talked about, this one person sitting in a garage could come up with, everything's getting virtualized, right? Yeah. Let's say somebody is an amazing WebRTC programmer. What is the next evolution of Zoom? What is the next evolution of this conversation? I mean, there's so much innovation possible because everything is now getting virtualized. So I think there is this window and this portal for very rapid, accelerated innovation.
I'll give you 4 words where the world is going. It's very simple, right? It also has like kind of a twang. It's like digital, mobile, virtual, personal. Right? It's like that. And every time you go through a portal of recession, it just accelerates. You're accelerating, digitization. Everything is going mobile, right? Then virtual and personal. So here we are. We have a framework. I spoke about acceleration. I spoke about equalization. I spoke about a magnitude increase in connectivity to the web, right? And I also highlighted some of the power shifts, like you were equal citizens of edge and cloud in the era of, internet. In the era of mobile, there was a power shift to the cloud. And what we are seeing, Poonacha, right now is you're seeing the power distribution going back to the edge. Think about it this way, right? I'm not trying to make this philosophical. You had like globalization, centralization, and suddenly like, we are like moving back into like, most of the intelligence is going into the edge. We are living on the edge. Even from a country's perspective, economic nationalism has taken off, like it was global, and now we are talking about each country behaving differently. So not to make this philosophical, but I think the prominence of the edge is something that you're going to see.
And in fact, this has always happened, right? You always see this, this kind of rubber banding happening, right? You had mainframes, then you basically got into personal computing, then you basically got into like cloud, then it got into objects, right? So you always see this kind of rubber banding effect happening, and there's innovation in any one of these transitions.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here comes the hypothesis. to be validated,
Mhm.
not clairvoyant, not oracle,
Right.
and not a soothsayer. But the hypothesis is we are moving from 3 billion to like 30 billion objects connected to the internet. There's nothing wrong. We have seen it. Everything is being connected to the internet, from doorbells, cars, you name it,
Right.
being connected to the internet. Even people being connected to the internet. It was on the body. Now we have seen artificial pancreas, uh, and we'll talk about it because
Right.
you know, I before I jump into the era of objects, someone else said, this is going to be the era of enchanted objects, you know, and we'll talk about the enchantment pieces later because the way you get enchantment is through machine intelligence, right? You're moving to be more sentient, you understand the surroundings. You're moving from a world where things were being done by you to done for you. You gave a phenomenal example of uh, hazardous, like fire,
Environments.
yeah, environments like firefighters. You don't need to send human beings there, done by you, done for you. Send
Right.
robots there,
Right.
right? As such, just cleaning home, done by you, done for you. Let's talk about distribution centers where today people, in spite of the pandemic, are going in. They're basically packing stuff for us and putting it in boxes. It's hard, and they're again done by you to done for you. Like you'll see robots in distribution centers, and logistics playing a bigger role. And of course, we were talking about you know the interface, understanding who you are, understanding the context, the ambient interfaces, and we'll talk about it, right?
And
Because
I think we should, before this conversation's over, I would love to get your perspectives on technology and the future of intimacy, right? As we look at these objects and enchanted objects and sentient objects and the social, we talked about, I love the digital, virtual, mobile, and social. How can technology be more intimate? Because one of the arguments I always get is that we're super connected, but very lonely, right? And especially now with social distancing and things like that, in the new world, how can technology also be an aid in increasing intimacy? So let's park that for now, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
all right, I've put that on the side, and we'll
Yeah,
we'll talk
we'll talk
about
about it.
yeah, digital intimacy,
Right.
in a wee bit. But
How can we make Tinder more tender? How's that?
Tinder more tender. I know the guest that you need to bring on your next podcast. He's a
Okay.
fellow Indian. He's a co-founder of Tinder, and I'm going to introduce you. His name is Dinesh Moorjani. He's a
Okay.
co-founder of Tinder, and
Right.
you have to, ask him this question.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
do that.
So, long story short is, if you saw mobile social cloud, look at what's happening with the FANG stock right now. And if you look at some of the robo indexes, if you look at bioinformatics as an index, you will see it is just taking off, even in the era of COVID. So, long story short, the hypothesis here is, we are looking at robotics, machine intelligence, and ambient interfaces taking off. The previous technologies will go through an acceleration. So e-commerce will just absolutely take off, like big time. This is to the power of two. Mobile social cloud, 100%. It was already accelerating. You will see that the slope of that will be much higher as it passes through the next portal, the portal of era of objects. So long story short, we will bring this all together on the final slide, so don't worry about this. Now, you want to talk about the user behaviors are changing and we'll be at a new normal. I'm talking about the world of physical and digital coming together in some shape, way, or form. I want to highlight that we were talking about people-to-people interactions. You're going to see people-to-machine interactions happening. Just take robotics. Robots in the ICU, that's taken off. Telepresence-based robots have taken off. Robots in distribution centers have taken off. The man-machine interface is becoming softer and softer. The experiences are getting more and more humanized, and we'll talk about going from sentient to sentiment. Right? This, you will be more acquainted. Think of the good old days. Poonacha, where we had these headsets, when you would not keep the phone to your ear,
Yeah.
when the early days of Bluetooth headsets, and you'd be standing and talking, and people thought, it was
You're
not
weird.
socially, weird. Like, I mean, today it's like the new normal. I mean, like,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, it doesn't matter at all. Remember the days when we were like, oh, you know what? I have a smart speaker at home. Am I going to scream out commands when I have guests at home? Like now it's a new normal. Like my son screams out, Alexa, what is this? Siri.
I mean, I think ambient computing is here to stay. It's almost like it can't go without it, right? It's there everywhere. It's pervasive.
The social norms have changed, right?
Right.
The new normal has changed. So long story short, people to people interfaces to people to machine, and we will continue to accelerate to move in a world where we go from asset heavy to asset light, and access heavy, right, of sorts. That's only going to accelerate, going further. So long story short,
And this is really important because I think, one of the things I see is that as we go into the new norm, I think we have realized now how little we actually need, right? We've actually realized as human species, we don't need all that heavy infrastructure. You know what? We're actually able to, in these four walls, still do what we need to do. Did we need that huge sprawling office? Did we need that huge sprawling institution with so much of carbon footprint? I think this is where I would say conscious technology is going to come into place. We're going to conscious institutions are going to come into place. How much do we need? Can we coexist? And nature has been a great leveler, right? So this kind of asset heavy, how much, I think Gandhi said, somebody said that, there's enough in the world for every man's need, except for one man's greed, right? So I
yeah.
think we are going to go back and really, I think technology is going to say, you don't need so many assets to get the job done. Let us re-look at the ethos. And this is I know you're going to touch about it, how institutions are going to adapt in the future.
Why don't we talk about it now, right?
Okay.
Let's look at the last two recessions and hindsight, and the institutions that actually changed in after 9/11, travel and transportation. Who would have thought? Like for you and me, it's no big deal, right? Walking barefoot in an airport, I don't think we would have mind. It's
that's a norm. Wearing
that's a
shoes
norm,
was the
right?
exception.
Right, and there you go. So, but if for people who have lived all their lives in the Western economies, like removing your shoes at the airport, became a new norm. For example, 2008. Look at the financial oversight, and that industry went through a transformation. Of course, e-commerce, the brick and mortar, went through a transformation. Now, if you actually look at it, you spoke about institutions, asset heavy and access light. Education tech will absolutely go through a transformation. Think about it. I'm seeing universities and colleges literally waiving GRE, but their fees are like sky high fees. The same courses that are taught in class in some of these big schools, you can do them online for literally free at this point in time. And job seekers don't have to worry because big companies like Facebook, Apple, and the companies that I have worked in, nobody actually looks at your pedigree anymore. It's like what you know and what you have built rather than where you came from. And that is a great leveler, So
that is
education
such
tech.
Important point, because with all these MOOCs, right, massive open online courses, edX, Coursera, Udacity, I mean, Harvard, MIT, they're all putting the courses online. And it is interesting because you're absolutely right, it is a great leveler, right? Before going into a prestigious, breaking the bank, being in student loans all your life, now the gig economy is saying, I need this to be done. Can you get it done, right? And
Exactly.
that is an amazing leveler because if somebody in San Diego can do something, that's great. If somebody in Ukraine can do something, that's great, right? And this is why you see companies today like Upwork and TopTal and all gearing up for this gig economy coming up. And people are looking at what does your portfolio look like, right?
Yeah.
So can you get this job done? Right.
Absolutely. So education tech, the institution, that's definitely going to go through a massive transformation. The second one is the byproduct of bioinformatics. In the last month, a doctor certified in California is talking and treating and helping patients in New York. This was a big barrier. If you actually looked and mapped out, the number of administrators versus doctors in the world of healthcare, sadly, we live in a very bloated system, right? Our healthcare is vastly inefficient. You're going to see that going through a massive transformation post-pandemic. And you know what? Who's going to gain? Hopefully. Again, when I say hopefully, because there are other externalities and forces in the US, is basically a common man. Now, suddenly, all the doctors that we work with, pediatrics, they're all, there's an app, Medici. And just to give you an example, one of the doctors pinged, and the consultation fee, used to be like $200+ an hour. On Medici, it's $40 an hour. How fantastic is that? And the goal here is at least two institutions are going to go through a massive change: EdTech and healthcare. That's intuitively obvious. And then you're going to see the effect of other institutions, the first derivative, the second derivative, and third derivative institutions that are going to go through a massive change. Commercial real estate, for example, is going to go through a massive change. We know what's happening with Main Street right now, which is a wee bit sad. I posted about this earlier on how the stocks are going up, but also unemployment is going up. Wall Street is thriving and Main Street is dying. That dichotomy is hard to reconcile. But long story short is post-pandemic, talking about hope, we spoke about accelerators and equalizers. I really think that as a group, we got to look at equalizers and invest and retool ourselves in those accelerators and jump in on that bandwagon.
No, I completely agree with you. I was just thinking when you were speaking, I read this book, I think by Eric Topol, The Patient Will See You Now, right? There's a radical transformation. Instead of the doctor will see you now because of the accelerated telemedicine. And you'll also see innovation at the edge, at the home, when now with enhanced biometric screening and all those things like blood pressure cuffs and all that, which were kind of going slowly, will get accelerated. Camera technology with depth and the digital depth cameras, looking at heart rate variability, looking at blood pressure, looking at vascular dilation, all the things which you could need at a device. I think camera technology will innovate. And now the physician can, instead of seeing 4 people a day, can see 40 people a day. So now the answer here is that no, the physician has not basically been compromised or not. They're not losing economy. They're seeing more people, but they're also doing more things which instead of the mundane diagnostics, they're able to actually get it in their fingertips. So this telemedicine and data acquisition at the edge, especially in healthcare. And FDA is now stepping up. I've seen certain drugs because of COVID being accelerated, right? And this is only going to push the envelope because people are going to demand it.
100%, absolutely.
Right.
So now let's jump into, you said depth cameras, let me quickly go through the 3 things, right? Technology trends, this is a very deep slide. Don't worry about it. Very simple. You're going from core to the edge, computing.
By the way, for people listening over here, this could be a 2-day conversation. We're trying to get this done within an hour. So yes, so I completely understand.
So how much time do we have, Poonacha?
We have 20 minutes. We're good.
All right, 20 minutes is a lot. So, okay. So if you look at computing, we had companies like Intel, the conversation about Moore's Law, I think kind of like Moore's Law is kind of like struggling a wee bit. Everybody agrees. So you went from like CPUs, you went to NPUs, which is like neuromorphic computing, where you basically have a chipset which is made for AI. Let me put it this way. It's made for AI. It's not linear computing. It's neural computing. And now quantum. Go look at some of the earlier announcements this year. The era of quantum computing. That's happening. So On the computing side, you're going to see very simple. You're going from centralized to decentralized, right? And we saw that shift. We highlighted that shift as you move from the era of glass slabs to the era of enchanted objects. From 3 billion to 30 billion connected devices. You need to have that wee bit of decentralization in there. Experiences are going to be more immersive. We spoke about this, Poonacha. You said, we will move, basically from cameras to depth cameras, right? I think somewhere I have here depth cameras.
Yeah, I see depth cameras right there. Yep.
There you go, bro. Yep. Like depth cameras. We went from directional audio to multi-phased audios, like microphone, right. the thing that you have in all the smart speakers today, right?
Yeah, there's holophonic sound. Now there's an ability for you to really create these three-dimensional sound experiences where you can almost feel, you can put yourself in a market in Marrakesh or in the mountains of Himalayas and be able to feel this kind of stereophonic sound, right?
Yeah, with all the travel restrictions, that's the only thing that I can enjoy these days, mate.
Yeah, think about Gandhi Bazaar.
Oh, nah. But you're taking me back to the masala dosas,
which, I think about it nowadays. It's almost like my go-to thing. Anyway.
So the thing that I want to highlight is, you basically in the era of e-commerce, in the era of social cloud and mobile, people were doing like sentiment analysis, and now some of the things that we have created, even in the world of robotics, it's very close. It's very close in certain environments with certain boundary conditions. It's very close to a human. So we are basically moving from the world of like sentiments to sentience. You're going to see that happening at this point in time. And then look, we had robots. If you actually look at cleaning robots, Roomba was there. Gosh, for the last 20 years. It was discrete robotics, but now you see robotics, one robot talks to the other. You had one drone, now you have like a swarm of drones, working with each other.
It's kind of ironic you're talking about this. I was telling you that 1992, when I first came here to the US, I was programming robots, but nobody would hire me because they were like, what, robots, 92? No way. And it's interesting to see. Then I said, okay, can I use AI technology for fraud analysis, which is very good. But then I look back now, there's this resurgence, right? Obviously, going into the new era.
Absolutely. Now it's like not just people to people, or people to machine, it's machine to machine communication, right. That's coming together. Also, if you look at the eras, the thing that I didn't talk to you about is between the two eras, there are certain trends that pop up. And let's talk, going holistic here a wee bit, Poonacha. There's been this era of going organic. We've seen that trend. And now, in addition to going organic, we are seeing things that are being inserted into human beings, like, 3D printed valves, artificial pancreas that people carry, some things that are being embedded, and I laugh about this and say, look, in 10 years from now, when someone comes and says, I have a chip on my shoulders, then I'll be such a bad thing. So long story short, we are moving from discrete to integrated, when it comes to robotics. And as people, we are stepping from being organic to a wee bit bionic, and if you actually look at some of the technology trends, I want to summarize, centralized to decentralized, sentiments to sentience, discrete to integrated, organic to bionic. And those are the trends. But I want to summarize, so that, you and I can have like a conversation on, or any of those questions. Look, the summary is we are going through these portals. Think of it as portals. The last portal that we went through, it was mobile social cloud, that basically shot into prominence. Before that, it was e-commerce, content going to the web, and most importantly, broadband, access, and people connected to the internet. We spoke about the 10x connectivity. You spoke about the 10x connectivity. Think about it. If a doctor was seeing, 4 patients, You could see 40 patients now, as you highlighted, the patient will see you now. There is this magnitude change, the 10x change. And that is something that's happening. So the hypothesis, if you're into the world of robotics, and robotics is absolutely going to change and transform industries like, distribution centers, surgical robotics are going to take off. And so from people to people to people to machine, and machine to machine is going to take off. So I have seen this sensors and sensor hubs, the price has like drastically gone down. The price of LiDAR modules, gosh, it used to be so expensive. You can get a LiDAR module for $12 now, $12. And it's amazing. So machine intelligence will be everywhere. Simple things like anomaly detection. You were talking about fraud detection, right. So anomaly detection is everywhere. Seeing patterns in space, seeing patterns in time. Some of the cameras right now will do people detection, parcel detection, and pet detection. That's like given, patterns in space, and you can see patterns in time. And that is there in most of the smart speakers, right? Because the smart speakers will distinguish between a dog and a hot dog, right. Because it knows you said hot first and the dog later.
And in fact, on this particular topic, I would love people to kind of go and check out some of the innovation at MIT Media Labs, right? Rosalind Picard's lab is doing some amazing work and looks at ambient computing, looking at, humanizing AI. So there's a lot of innovation even happening today in universities. And I'd love for people to kind of maybe go check it out and see some of the amazing work coming out of her labs.
Yeah, and then ambient interfaces. Yeah. It's multimodal communication. Because when you communicate with a human, it's not just with voice, there is touch, there is smells. And long story short, the interfaces are going to get more and more natural. Many times when you're chatting with people on a website, when you want to buy something, you have an identity crisis. You don't know whether it's a robot or it's a real human being that you're chatting to. And the biggest thing is, do you even care as long as you're getting the answer? There used to be times when it was awfully frustrating, especially for a person like me, Poonacha. I have a very thick accent. And, every time I would ask Siri something, I would get awfully frustrated. But now I'm very happy to say, Siri, Alexa, they
know you.
And, yeah, they know my accent, which is, and my mother-in-law, basically when she, came to visit us, she would basically ask Alexa, what the temperature was.
Right.
And with her very thick South Indian accent. And, she was comfortable having, a smart speaker give her that information. Right. So long story short, I think we have come a long way. Our interfaces are going to be more and more ambient. AI is going to be everywhere. And, the world of robotics is absolutely going to transform, because you said that on going from cloud to the edge to the cloud. The thing that is happening in the world of robotics is robotics used to be a vertically integrated system. You needed to do soup to nuts, but now it's a horizontally integrated system. I could go buy a LiDAR module for navigation. I could take the safety critical functions, from another company, and I could put that together and integrate that with AWS for the cloud. And I could go get a bunch of developers to develop on, Swift and Java, and basically put an end-to-end system together. So you've moved from a world of vertical integration to horizontal integration. The same things goes for machine intelligence too. So this is absolutely going to accelerate across the board.
I love that. And this is the roadmap. There's nothing to summarize. Robotics, machine intelligence, and ambient interfaces. When I think about the design, this is where I think UI, UX, user interface, user experience will kind of transform into, I would say, object interfaces, ambient. How do you design for the future? I think designers today, when I look at design, they're still stuck in the widget framework, right? And we need to kind of rethink design. Technologists have to rethink what the interface looks like. The interface has disappeared. The interface is a remnant. When I was in Motorola, I thought, having the thinnest keypad is the most important thing. It was called Moto Razor, right? Amazing. Never asked the question, is making a phone call that important? Do I really need a keyboard, right? So I think there is going to be this innovation of ambient interfaces being more intimate, right? When I look at my parents who are now living in Coorg in a coffee plantation, very remote part of India, I would do anything to give them a hug, or I could do anything. I could feel their hug. Now imagine I could ship them a jacket, and it basically had haptics, right? So what I could do, I could send them a hug emoji, and if my mom was wearing that jacket and both of us were wearing that jacket, we could basically feel each other hugging ourselves. It is the next version of FaceTime, right? So I think this haptic interface is going to make technology more intimate, right? Before I can say, now I can see Sridhar, I can hear Sridhar. The other question is, can I touch Sridhar, right? And I think that's going to be the step function when it comes into making interfaces more intimate.
Yeah. And look, there is haptic holography, that started. Even taking these small steps in cars, in some of the new cars, when you actually for safe driving, if you change lanes without putting on the indicator, have you seen the vibration of the wheel, right, for example, right? So it's being imbued. Like, long story short, I can give you a spectacular array of examples where haptics has already percolated into the system, and it's going to get natural. And look, that's going to keep accelerating across the board. The thing that I also want to summarize is, you spoke about hope, Macha. Recessions are great equalizers. Everything from a king to a commoner today, can get infected. We have seen that. Similarly, we also spoke about how a person who has very few resources, but, has access to Amazon Web Services, could start a company, do marketing on social media, and how a farmer in Africa or, or a third world country basically can perform transactions with their mobile phone equivalent to a Western farmer. So long story short, you got to look at how, post-pandemic, what are the technologies that's going to help, elevate the world. And we saw poverty go down significantly in the last 15 years. We saw hunger going down in the last 15 years. Long story short, it's not all doom and gloom. So there is a place where, humanity is kind of like uplifting itself. So I really think recessions, I would look at it as great equalizers.
And this is so important, because if you have a dream and the desire, right, this could be the portal for you to kind of really thrive, right? So you really, today, I think with the dream, people always dreamed, but then they're looking for those opportunities. So if your dream and desire is to really make a difference and an impact, there's, I always say, the authenticity, integrity, and higher purpose, right? If you have a dream which is authentic and you have the integrity to follow through with it, which is your desire, and if it is not just about you, but it's about we, then that's a social. I 100% believe it'll make a difference.
Yeah. Another thing, recessions are great accelerators. So like, we were like, gosh, for how long have we been toying with like telemedicine? Like, how long? It's like one shot MediChain. There are so many apps, and it can accelerate. So look at this as an opportunity. If you are working on aspects of AI, you'll do amazing. If you're in data science, you'll do like amazing, because every CIO is now becoming a chief digital officer. You're going through a digital transformation. We spoke about digital, mobile, virtual, personal. If you are in any of those fields, you're just going to accelerate through this portal. The thing that I want to highlight is institutions are going to go through a massive and a radical transformation. Education tech, it's amazing, that education tech will go through a massive transformation. And Poonacha, without naming names, how many educational institutions are sitting on massive assets like prime real estate, big funds? Nothing wrong, but now I really think a person who is sitting in Ukraine could get the same level of education, with Coursera's and other resources or MOOCs, as you said, right? That's something that's possible. And healthcare and bioinformatics is going to go through a massive transformation. Like, for example, the Human Genome Project. How many people who have gone through COVID and come out successfully on the other side are donating their plasma, are subjecting themselves to tests, and genetics and modifications. The new vaccines are much, much, much different in their structure. So healthcare and bioinformatics will go through a massive transformation, in my opinion. But remember, this is something that we haven't touched. But you will see one other trend that I have not spoken so far is on security issues. Every time institutions go through a change, anytime there are new technologies, anytime there are new products, you will always see new attack vectors from a security side. Because the more connected you are, the more
vulnerable.
Absolutely. So
I think this is a topic we should maybe have a follow-up, because you've done so much work with IoT, IoE, right? And today with all the imagine objects that's fine at home. Imagine you are now with bionic having, artificial pancreas, and now there is, a denial of service attack on your organs, right? So it's like you have this entire whole new other conversation, which it can bring out the dark side of humanity. So we today are focused on the lighter side and the compassionate side. So this is amazing.
You know what? I'll take you on it.
Okay.
I will put together a bunch of material which will dovetail into this framework, and let's look at the attack vectors. And for that, Poonacha, I'll wear a black shirt.
the black hat, the white hat and the black hat.
There you go, right? I mean, long story short is this was a conversation about equalizers and accelerators and hope and giving back to the world. We'll have a conversation on the other side of what those security, privacy, data integrity, non-repudiation aspects associated with security in another conversation in a couple of weeks or so.
Absolutely.
But this is something that I didn't touch upon, and we'll have a conversation.
Separate topic.
One more thing that I want to highlight. Many of us, with the education that we have, the privilege of being lucky, we've been at the right place at the right time. We're all very privileged. And when you go through times of economic recession and depression, there's a world around us that's going through a massive, gut-wrenching change. If you can do one thing that can help alleviate and give back, this is the time to do it. And the mantra that I truly, truly believe and love is, in every walk of life, in every conversation, in every relationship, if you can never take more than you can give, I think that'll be wonderful. That's my only request I have. Anytime I get a platform, please give more than you can take in these times, because that's going to define you, who you are, and that's what we need to do as responsible human beings. So that's all I had.
Thank you, sir. I think with that, I have nothing more to say. I mean, let us really tread lightly, right? Let us give more than we take from this planet in our social relationships, in our personal relationships. And these are times when it's going to bring out the best in humanity. And the things we do is going to determine how our children, the next several generations, you're going to say, what did this generation do? What did this generation of technologists do for the planet? So we are going to be measured, right? So let us kind of really set the stage. And for that, I'm really grateful, Sridhar, to have you today. And more to come, more to come. Thank you.
Poonacha, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the stream.